discussion on co-designing the value immersion. It started with like a talk about what is the concern when you go into the community. One was the survey fatigue that the community might face. Like people coming in asking this question, just taking question, but what is it for them? Some like Shalane shared that people coming into the village to ask a question and then get replied, oh, we did say this already. Yeah. And then heat in Pitaslaut and Suok. One of the concern is the heat for the participant. Then comes water supply, which in Pitaslaut and Wangkot, Pitaslaut rely on rainwater, and then Wangkot gravity water and some. Just to be up, Logi is the government. Okay, government water. And then in Suok, because we haven't really had that conversation with them, for now it's maybe gravity, or if in Bonian Timber they have their own water system. And network connection is the important one.
This is your participant concern about those things.
First world problem.
First world problem.
Is there connectivity in the kampong? Okay, and then we went into like more activities. So I shared originally what is the activities I first draft design for these two places. Two, because there's very initial, I have not yet started with Bonian Timber conversation to design on that one. But there is already Pitaslaut and in Wangkot that, okay, if the activities, there is fishing, because Wangkot, Pitaslaut is mainly rely on fishing. Like the kampung yang bernelayan, so they rely on fishing. If we go out, we fish, come back with no fish, means there's no food for the night. Just kidding. Just kidding. And then for paddy planting, but yeah, fishing, and then what if there is no catch for the day? And then for paddy planting, what happens if weather that's too hot or heavy rain? What is the plan B for that? And also the discussion on the dates from the original date and then how to shift. Then the safety for the participants. Of course, the highest risk will be in Pitaslaut, where the driving and then the boat ride, and then for fishing it needs to go to open water. Yeah. All right. So moving on to the program is for Pitaslaut, they will be leaving a day earlier to travel to Sandakan and then staying there for the night. Early morning, they have to take a boat ride to Pitaslaut. That is for the Pitaslaut team. But for Wangkot and Bonian Timber, they can depart on the day. And then upon arriving is the introduction, just framing the activities with all the briefings. Then comes the storytelling part, where the story is more in exchange based. Like we ask a question to the community, and then at the same time share our part of the story, climate story, but not a scientific top-down approach, but it's more a story or information that is kinder to the community. On the first day, there's a part one for knowledge sharing. It can be done over when cooking with the community or having dinner with the community. And then day two is in the morning is going out to experience what is it out there for the realities of the community, like fishing, paddy planting. So the whole day, and also gathering data of like what the data we need for climate. And then at night is doing another part two of knowledge sharing and also storytelling with the community. And at that point, to reflect on what happened in the morning of day two. What was the outdoor reflection to go into the storytelling. Then the extra day is for Pitas Laut is to travel back. But for Kampung Wangkod and Bonian Timber, the location which is near, have a slower time, can spend more time with the community to, if there's any extra data that is needed, extra story that is needed, that can be done on the extra day, means day 3. But for Pitas Laut trip, have to return on the day. Yeah. Okay. And then there was also a discussion where we were thinking about showing the map, but how to reach a middle ground, like the map, bringing the map. As far as I know, there's only Colin and Eric who can explain on the map, like really explain on the map. But the rest, it needs to be someone really fluent to explain on the map. So how to reach the middle ground to tell the story, or if do we use the map to tell the story, to share the knowledge, or is it a different translation for the community? And then needing one extra day for preparation for everyone that is going for value immersion, to be in the same page of what is happening on the ground. So the questions, there is the question of the purpose of the question that is needed for the map is to ground the climate data. So what is happening during the valley immersion is to reflect it on the map that is happening. That's how to ground it, and then to understand the community with the perception of change.
The second question was to understand community. What is the experience of changes that they in their villages, in terms of their livelihood? So that's what it meant on perception of change. Because if we go into deep on climate, it might be some big word for them. Yeah. Want me to explain the whole question?
Just the question.
Okay. So for the categorization of the questions, so we have 4 categorization, which is the first one is the demographic. So just the basic question. We want to know what's the ethnic group in the villages, the age group, what they're doing, and where are they coming. I mean, what are their main activities? So that come into the livelihood part, where we want to understand what have changed again, to understand the perception of change in terms of their livelihood. So how is their catch? How is their harvest? What is the result from their livelihood? Meaning to say, like, dorang punya kebun, dorang punya hasil tangkapan. Yeah. So is it enough, or are they getting more compared to last time, or is it the other way around? And then the method. What have changed in terms of their agriculture method? On what have they do to adapt with, whether if they were there any changes, and if there's changes, then what are the adaptation measures or mechanism that they practice now compared to last time. Yeah. And then also the alternative. So what have been practiced last time, and whether it's the practices is no longer possible, then what are the alternative livelihood that they are doing at the moment. So this kind of question but again, in a way that we portray this question in a way that is more having a conversational instead of like just throwing. So it's based on what they respond. So yeah, we navigate from there. And then this one, Belinda mentioned about timeline mapping. So example like 10 years ago versus now, it could be like no need 10 years lah, probably maybe like 5 or 3 years ago, what have changed. So and also to identify what the natural disaster, that's meaning to say the weather, probably whether it's flood. So like begitu kata Belinda. Yeah. So like what happened last time, and was it, I mean, if there's flood or like the drought, is it becoming more worse, or is it like seasonal? So we want to understand on that. And then also a bit of reflective question. So this one it's more on probably I think what we discussed just now also, like to understand how are they feeling, what is their perception in terms of their how do they digest, how do they process in a more on these all changes, like how do they feel about the changes, like do they have any fear that the catch is getting less, or will the weather affect them again, whether they will have difficulty in terms of the adaptation of their livelihood, the alternative. So that's like feeling of the future. But this one probably maybe we can navigate the question in a more gentle way, kinder way, like we always have to be mindful on that. And then another pointers for the reflective is the feasibility of the activity in the next 5 to 10 years lah. So whether we want to see from their perception, do they think that what are they doing now, will they still practice it in the next 5 years, or will they do some modification of their method? So that's basically the question now.
So we were the group that discussed how to tell the climate story, and we came up with kind of 2 bubbles of content. We talked about languaging. What is the kind of language we want to use when we send our messages, communicate our messages. And then some of the points that came up is that the language has to be decolonial and non-binary. And then we talked about...
What that means in a simple language.
Yes. So decolonial meaning that it's not the kind of language that is imposing on other people or communities. And then the example we talked about was like, on one hand, on one spectrum, it's like all doom and gloom, and then on another spectrum it's like toxic positivity. So we cannot be either doom and gloom or toxic positivity. We kind of have to find a middle ground, like what the other group was talking about also. We talked about that quite a bit, kan? Alignment.
And then like also for decolonial, the language would also mean that maybe it's urgent for us, for those who know about climate, the crisis, especially the scientists, it's urgent, and then we would have that urgent language. But if we impose that urgent language to those to fishermen would be like, who are you to tell me it's urgent? So we don't want to impose our language, paksa orang terima kita punya language. So that what would we mean to decolonize our language?
So, which brings up this other key point, agency over urgency. This is what Kenneth talked about. So he said that in our messaging, we should try to create that sense of agency instead of urgency, because urgency would be a little bit like part of the problem, because we're taking inspiration from Bio actually. So Bio is this philosopher that we kind of like, and then he says that we should kind of slow down in the times of crisis, and urgency would be urgency is part of that sense of like hustle, cepat. that kind of sense of business as usual,
Yeah.
which is kind of part of the problem as well.
Which is driven by the need for productivity.
Yeah, which is driven by the need of productivity. And then one of the questions that we were trying to answer is how to find alignment with head and heart, which brought us to this diagram, the complexity diagram. So the complexity diagram is something we in FS use to explain. Yana, you want to take this?
Complexity.
Yeah, how to explain complexity.
So like Natasha said, it's a framework that we in Forever Sabah use to brainstorm sometimes. So just a little bit brief about what the graph is about. So when we say here knowledge of the macro and the micro, we didn't mean that the higher your position is in the hierarchy, or like you're a scientist, you have more knowledge than the fishermen. That's not what we mean in the graph. It means that it's a different context of knowledge. So experiential knowledge, which involves the hands, the feet, and practicality. For example, farmer or fisherman, versus the knowledge of marine scientists. Scientists that knows about fish, the ocean, their knowledge is formal, scientific, academic, would be up here. And then fishermen working with the monsoon season, fish stock, fish bombing, stuff like that would be here. So it's a different level of knowledge and practices. That's what we are trying to say in this knowledge context, and which directly explains that the more grassroots you are in the graph, the more you are experiential in terms of your behavior and the way you operate with the landscape wherever you are, whatever you do. And then, so the macro design would be our state government, SMJ, so all those who have 1 million ringgit, 50,000 ringgit, 15 million ringgit. Yeah, okay. A lot of money over here. So we put the heart, the hands and the feet and the head here. I think it's self-explanatory, or do you guys need more explanation on that? Kan? Faham kan? What we are trying to say, why we put the head and the heart here? Yes. So we had a little bit of discussion also. Does this mean the head doesn't have a heart? It does. Cuma. So yeah. So that's how we were discussing. We use the graph like that. So when the macro, when the head gets more info on the local scenario, or the micro, they have more knowledge about what's happening here, they will move further down, and then they will have better understanding, will have more knowledge on the experience of the local scenario. If they actually have the effort, if they got the messaging right, they will go further down and down and down, and will eventually connect to the micro, to the heart here, and the hands and the feet. If the micro were given materials, were given communications of what's happening there at the heart, at the head, they will have better practices, and they will understand the patterns of their landscape better. For example, paddy farmer. Paddy farmer that do traditional farming maybe will have better practices if they work together with scientists of agriculture. So they will, whilst doing what they already know with the land, but they will gain knowledge they will combine that knowledge, and that will improve their practices, their behavior, their awareness better. It goes up and up. And then suddenly they meet in the middle. So when they meet in the middle, we were thinking of to have them meet in a coalition. So this coalition, we actually didn't manage to go further on who will be in the coalition, what will the coalition do, those specifics. But we're thinking to have this platform, this table for the artists, influencer, for the grassroots, for the voices of the ground to meet the head. Begitu. So this is like our system, our social system, and this is what we will use as our comm strategy in this social system. And we came up with a language that brings something out from these actors lah. So yeah, I think Natasha, you can explain more on the language that we are gearing towards. I mean, even this one kami ndak berapa kasih habis, but we thought about one of the first strategy would be just to bring out curiosity first, before we impose, before we colonize, before we something like that. So you want to impose and colonize. I mean, before we brainwash. Maybe
Okay. Maybe not brainwash lah. So I mean, just going back to this complexity diagram as well, what we were trying to do in the group process also was trying to map where our target audience might be in this complexity diagram, and that's why you see something like experiential Sabah COP up here, or the Heart of Borneo conference up here. So we were trying to map people like the government agencies and scientists somewhere here, and then community workshops, for example, will be somewhere here. So then if we actually looked at this as a whole, these are our platforms. If we looked at this as a whole, then it would mean that it would mean something like a more holistic and integrated approach. So then, if you see here mediums and platforms, we were trying to like just put these things, like film, maybe it would go somewhere in the middle, and then forums would go somewhere maybe up here, something like that.
So this is just wordplay, taking inspiration from the words on the schedule, where there was anxiety, scenarios, and possibilities. So there's a saying when they say like, okay, the crisis is now, or the climate crisis, but then we're not really talking about now, as you're saying, agency over urgency. But if you change now to another way, you say ASAP, as soon as possible, but we're not really pushing, obviously saying not the urgency but agency, right? So it's kind of looking at that as well, the realities of the timeline. So in a sense, it could be possible phases. You are saying like a movement or a campaign or something. So like the first bit is always like addressing the anxieties of it. So just like socializing, then processing what's going on in the communities, in the land, or governmental, as long as they start to feel, you know. Then the second bit is, you start, scenario building or mitigation of it, right? What could happen, and understand the landscape more in terms of what the climate can change. Then the third bit is like the adaptation of it. How do you start progressing, building plans, or movements, This is mainly, I guess, where the agency comes in, but all of it. And P is the possibilities. What's the future like? Whether it's pure destruction or whether we are halfway in the middle. Don't know, right? That's why it's just possibilities. But just that, so ASAP, but also in the campaign wise, you burn too much, you get asap. So,